Planets, like people, have unique personalities. And because of their personalities, they interact differently with each other. Some planets get along, while others don't. And then there's those that have a neutral disposition towards each other. And these relationships are called the natural relationships of planets. And those relationships, they don't change because they're based on the inherent qualities of the planets. Right? We all can relate to this because we all have a unique personality, and certain fundamental qualities of ours, they just don't change because they're inherent. And so it's natural that when we get together with others, we can either get along well or we don't, right? And we, of course, also call this compatibility. And this concept of compatibility originally comes from the planets, right? Some planets, they have a high compatibility, while others are naturally incompatible. We understand that there are three types of natural relationships. Planets can be friends, enemies, or indifferent. Friendly planets, they get along well, right? They support each other, they have similar goals and values, and so they complement each other's functions. Inimical planets, they disagree, right? They cause a lot of problems and hardships for each other. The way that they function is diametrically opposed on a fundamental level. And so whenever they come together, they create a lot of challenges and conflicts. And then there are planets that are neutral, right? They neither support nor hinder. It's like there is another person in the room, but you just ignore them, right? Whether that person is there or not, it makes no difference for you, right? They can't help you, nor do they cause you trouble. And so you just indifferent towards them and just mind your own business. And so every planet has a core nature, and when they relate to each other, they can be supportive, hindering, or neutral. And this is called the natural relationship of a planet. And we can use the following rule to determine this relationship, right? The lords of the 2nd, 4th, 5th, 8th, 9th, and 12th house from the Mula Trikona sign are friendly, and the lords of all the other houses are inimical. And there's one exception: the lord of the planet's exaltation sign is also considered a friend. We use the Mula Trikona sign to determine natural relationships because the Mula Trikona sign is the source of a planet's energy, right? The planet derives its energy, its nature, and its personality from the Mula Trikona sign. And so we use that Mula Trikona sign to see how a planet is going to relate to other planets. So let's take Mars as an example, right? Mars's Mula Trikona sign is Aries. And so starting from Aries, we can determine which planets are Mars's natural friends, enemies, or neutral. And so we use the rule that the planets ruling the 2nd, 4th, 5th, 8th, 9th, and 12th houses from the Mula Trikona sign, which in this case is Aries, are friends, and the planets ruling the other signs are enemies. And of course there's one exception, that Mars's exaltation sign is Capricorn, and this makes Saturn a natural friend on account of Capricorn. So now let's determine the natural relationships of Mars. So let's start with Venus. Venus rules the 2nd and 7th house from Aries, and so it becomes a natural neutral planet. Right? Venus rules the friendly 2nd house, but also the inimical 7th house, and so combined it becomes neutral. Right? When both houses are friendly, then the relationship is friendly. When both houses are inimical, the relationship is inimical. And when one is friendly and the other one is inimical, then it is neutral. And of course the Sun and Moon, they only rule one sign, and so that means that it can either be friendly or inimical. Mercury rules the 3rd and 6th house from Aries, which are both considered inimical, and so Mercury becomes a natural enemy to Mars. The Moon rules the 4th from Aries, and so it is a friend of Mars. The Sun rules the 5th from Aries, and it is another friend of Mars. Jupiter rules the 9th and 12th houses from Mars and is a friend of Mars. And finally, Saturn rules the 10th and 11th from Aries. And so normally we would consider that Saturn is an enemy of Mars. But we have said before that the exaltation sign of the planet becomes friendly. And so overall, this makes Saturn neutral to Mars. So those natural relationships are really important because they reveal how planets relate to each other on an essential level. And we can get some amazing insights from this, right? Just like in human relationships, the way that planets interact might not always be fair and balanced, right? One planet might do a lot more for the relationship than the other, and there can be an imbalance and injustice in how one planet treats the other. Right? Saturn treats Mars actually quite well, while Mars treats Saturn pretty bad. And so when Saturn is in Aries or in Scorpio, then he is in a pretty hostile environment, and Mars tries his best to cause some serious problems and hardships to Saturn. On the other hand, when Mars is in Saturn's signs, right, then Saturn treats Mars quite well, right? Saturn supports Mars in Capricorn to the point that Mars can actually excel in his achievements, right? And in Aquarius, Saturn is also not giving Mars any trouble, right? He's sort of indifferent to what Mars is doing. So this is a really complex relationship, right? Saturn helps Mars excel, while Mars tries his best to undermine or even destroy Saturn, right? Talking about unequal relationships. Luckily, the planets also have equal relationships, but they can be equally good or equally bad, okay? And so let's again use Mars as an example. Mars has an equally beneficial relationship with the Sun, right? Mars and the Sun, they are mutual friends, and so they have a mutually rewarding relationship. When the Sun goes into the signs of Mars, it is well received, right? Mars tries his best to provide an environment that supports what the Sun wants so that it can achieve its goals. And similarly, when Mars goes into the Sun's territory, then the Sun is there to help Mars fulfill its ambitions. And so Mars and the Sun, they are in a mutually beneficial relationship and in a balanced relationship. Then there are mutually unrewarding relationships. These are the relationships that are equally bad for both planets. So let's take the Sun and Saturn as an example. The Sun is in a naturally hostile environment when in Capricorn and Aquarius, right? Saturn really doesn't like the Sun. It opposes what the Sun wants to do, right? The Sun wants to express its unique talent, its purpose, and its leadership. But Saturn is all about institution and obedience. And the Sun just really doesn't like that, right? It wants to follow its own rules, its own ideas, its own leadership. And so the Sun is in a very difficult placement when in Capricorn or Aquarius. And unless it is willing to make sacrifices to thrive in such a restrictive environment, it will face a lot of obstacles and criticism, because people definitely won't appreciate the Sun's natural expression in this naturally hostile environment. Now, Saturn doesn't get a better treatment from the Sun. Leo is an equally hostile environment for Saturn, because Leo demands from Saturn to step up to the podium and strive for personal recognition. Right? The Sun demands from Saturn to express its uniqueness and to make a name for itself, and all of this are qualities that directly contradict Saturn's nature. Saturn is naturally humble, simple, and frugal, and it thrives in environments that reward patience and hard work. But in Leo, it is expected to go on center stage, make an immediate impact, right? Be charismatic, magnetize the crowd. And all of this is completely unnatural for Saturn, that really just wants to keep a low profile and, do his job. So here we can see how important those natural relationships are. It makes such a big difference for a planet when it is supported in a friendly environment, or when it is hindered in an hostile environment, or when it is just able to do what is necessary in a neutral environment.